Welcome back to Lurie Talks, everybody. I am so glad to have you with me as always. And you know me, I'm always thrilled to jump into another deep dive with all of you. Now today, we're going to exploring a topic that a lot of you requested. We're going to be diving into the different perspectives on homosexuality that exist within Islam.
It's a complex topic for sure.
Absolutely. And in full disclosure, we're not trying to tell anybody what to believe or anything like that. We're simply trying to learn and understand. You guys sent in a YouTube video. It features Mohammed Hijab talking about this very thing. And we're just going to take a look and try to understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, and just to echo that, we're not trying to speak for all Muslims or anything like that. This is one man's perspective.
Right, exactly. One voice within a much larger conversation. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get to it. Right off the bat, something Hijab said really caught my attention. He makes a distinction between forbidding homosexuality as a practice, like the actions, but not as a feeling. And he emphasizes that we can't always control, our feelings or attractions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I thought so too. So what's your take on that? Like making that distinction, separating those two things?
Well, I think it's interesting how he emphasizes the actions, the practice over how someone might feel naturally. And it kind of almost seems like he's trying to reconcile religious teachings with lived experience. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like acknowledging that people might have feelings they can't control.
Exactly. Now, the question is, how common is this view? Is this widely accepted within Islamic thought, or do we see other scholars interpreting things differently?
Yeah, great point, because we're really only looking at one perspective here. It really emphasizes how different interpretations can exist within, any faith, really.
For sure.
Now, Hijab goes on to rank homosexual acts as really high on the hierarchy of sins in Islam. He even compares it to murder.
Yeah, a major sin.
Right, a major sin. Now, in preparation for this, you sent over some really interesting research about this whole idea of sins in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
There are major sins and minor sins, right?
Exactly. This concept of a hierarchy of sins is really key here. And it's not just labeling something as sinful. It's trying to understand how severe a sin is and what the consequences are, for different actions.
So walk us through that. How does that hierarchy work? What makes something a major sin?
So basically, some acts are universally condemned as major sins across the board, right? Like murder. And that carries severe consequences. Now, on the other hand, you've got what are considered minor sins, little white lies or talking about someone behind their back. It's still wrong, for sure, but the consequences are, different.
So where do homosexual acts fit in this hierarchy?
Well, Hijab puts them squarely in the category of major sin. He argues that the severity is based on both interpretations of scripture, like the Quran, and also perceived harm to society.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially that concept of societal harm. It makes me think about something else he said later in the video where he compares the severity of homosexual acts to a man cheating on his wife.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there. It's complex. What are some of the nuances we need to consider when we hear this type of comparison?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That comparison is going to land differently for different people. Some might hear it and think, okay, he's really trying to emphasize how serious this is according to his beliefs. While others, they might be really offended by that comparison. They might see it as, insensitive or just completely missing the point. It's a reminder that analogies, especially on sensitive topics like this, have to be used really carefully because they can have a big impact on different people. They can be interpreted in lots of different ways.
Right. Context matters. It's we have to be aware of not only what's being said, but who's saying it, who's hearing it, and what all those different layers of meaning could be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, before we wrap up today's deep dive, I do want to quickly remind you guys to head over to LurieTalks.com. It's got all the show notes, transcripts, bonus material, you name it. It's there. And of course, while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this episode with your friends. Let's keep these conversations going. Okay, so getting back to our conversation, we've just taken a look at Mohammed Hijab's specific views on homosexuality within Islam. We talked about the idea of separating feelings from actions, that hierarchy of sins, and those tough comparisons he makes. What are your final thoughts? Anything else you want to add?
Just a reminder, this is just one viewpoint, one interpretation, among many. Islam, like any major religion, is diverse, different schools of thought, different cultural contexts. It all plays a role.
So true. And that's really the beauty of these deep dives. It's all about expanding our understanding, hearing different perspectives, and continuing to learn.
Yeah, keep those brains working.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for all of you to ponder. How do other faith traditions grapple with these kinds of questions? With evolving social norms and individual beliefs that might differ from, traditional teachings. This isn't just a question for Islam. It's a question for all of us, regardless of our beliefs.
It's a universal human struggle, I think.
You got that right. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you for listening to Lurie Talks. We truly value your feedback, and, we always love hearing from you. So keep sending in those topic suggestions. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those conversations going. Bye, everybody.
See ya.